Thank you all for joining us. Today's panel is going to be fixated on CDN optimization. As all of us know today, optimizing the video workflow is more important than ever. People are watching on more devices, in more formats, in more locations, and our end users are more demanding probably than they've ever been. So today we have these incredible and brilliant panelists next to us to provide their perspectives on their strategies that they have in place to help develop and maintain the delivery infrastructure to deliver to these end users exactly what they're asking for while maintaining these needs within budget of their companies. And so a lot of these events are largely anticipated, such as the World Cup and the Super Bowl. And for Zak and Thomas, they get to fixate and work on those, while Wendy gets to be ambushed by natural disasters and an influx of large traffic spikes that she has to prepare for but doesn't know when they're coming. And then we actually have David and Alicia here for the customer voice. So they're going to share with us what they're hearing from customers and what's going on in the industry and how these companies are meeting those needs and what they can do in the future to do so. So if you would all be kind enough to actually provide a short overview of what you do at each of your companies, that'd be great.
Hi, I'm Zak Shanker, Director of Video Optimization and Experience at CBS Interactive. I work on the Central Video Technology Group, where we provide sort of common shared products and services to the 25 plus different business units at CBS Interactive to help them effectively deliver video. So that's everything across the video stack, now including a lot of our work on migration to Multi CDN and the delivery workflow.
Cool, yeah. I'm Thomas Symborski. I'm a principal engineer at Fubo TV, an OTT streaming platform. I do a lot of things for Fubo, but I am also responsible for our last mile delivery, and I've been working with serving video over CDNs for a number of years now.
I'm Wendy Frazier. I head up the web and content delivery team at the Weather Company. How many people have the Weather Channel or Weather Underground apps on their phones, just by show of hands? All right, for everybody that don't have their hands up, I'll see you after this. Now, in all seriousness, my team is responsible for the delivery and creating all the apps that you have on your phone. So all of the development, the delivery workflow for video, all goes through my team.
My name is David Osoon. I'm the CEO and founder of RealEyes. We've been a professional services consulting development company for about 15 plus years, specializing in streaming video. We work with customers like NBC Sports, BAM, Viacom, Oracle, EA Games, so forth, helping them with a broad spectrum of video application development, infrastructure design, and streaming delivery.
Awesome. My name is Alicia Pritchett, and I'm actually the market lead for media and entertainment at Fastly. We are CDN that's based out of San Francisco, but I'm based out of Atlanta. I actually live on planes. That's what I do. So I'm also the president and founder of Women in Streaming Media, which is an organization created to provide diversity in the streaming media organization to bridge the gender gap and really just to help undergird women and help them to be successful and more visible and relevant in this industry.
Great. Thanks, you guys. So to start, this question is for Wendy, Thomas, and Zak. Wendy, we'll start with you. Can you briefly describe your current CDN and delivery architecture for us and what drove you to configure it this way?
Yeah, so we're multi-CDN approach is what we follow. We use Fastly for all of our VOD content. For TV and live streaming, we leverage Akamai. As far as the VOD architecture, we generally go through, your tagging, metadata, transcoding, all that happens before the scenes. And then we push that to our API layer, and then we push that to our S3 bucket. So what drives that? Is that the final question?
Absolutely, yeah.
What drives that is cost, performance, and just scalability. We have over 100 million people that consume video week over week on our products. So we want to make sure that we have the most robust and scalable CDN delivery that we need in order to deliver that demand.
Are you looking to make any changes to that delivery architecture in the next 6 months or so?
You're always looking to make your workflows and processes more efficient. Again, it's driven based on the demand and based on the volume, but we are always looking to optimize and fine-tune our delivery.
Great, thanks. Thomas, same question for you, if you could provide an overview of your architecture as well.
Sure, yeah. At Fubo, we're multi-CDN for all of our live content. We use a service called Deliver to manage, kind of balance how we send traffic per user per session. Also allows for switching a user from one CDN to another inside a contiguous session without any user interruption. It's important for us just because we have a lot of high concurrent events that we're sharing network and CDN space with other providers that are also serving this content. We use Fastly as our kind of our request collapsing. They have a product called Media Shield. So we have kind of a CDN stacking type of implementation where Fastly is that request collapsing Media Shield in front of our multiple origins, also handles primary, secondary fallback, and then we have a number of CDNs that we've strategically gone out and picked based on our content and where our users are and what we've seen. That's currently our implementation.
Great. And looking to make any changes to that in the next 6 months or so?
I think, yeah, we're always looking to tune the configs per CDN, make sure that we're using the right configs for our content. We're also looking into international expansion, so trying to understand what the story is like in Europe is interesting, but yeah.
Very cool. Zach, completely same question. What is your delivery architecture?
Yeah, so at CBSI, there's, covering 25 different businesses. There's certainly a lot of different use cases, a lot of different workflows. We have VOD use cases, live linear, live events. There's a huge combination of things. So there isn't sort of really one answer there right now. But a lot of the work we've been doing over the last year is moving from a single CDN setup where, for a live event, the single CDN would act as origin as well, live ingest on live events, and really provide all of that. And we've been moving to an architecture now where we're utilizing more cloud origins, both with AWS and with Google Cloud, depending on the business and the project. Storing more of our media files in cloud origins, using live origin products in the cloud. And then from there, we're also using Fastly's Media Shield for the request collapsing and protecting the underlying origins. And then particularly for Super Bowl, we have up to 5 CDNs that we're able to use there. And CDNs, we can then select which ones apply best to each particular project that we're doing. And we're using CDXs for our multi-CDN decisioning there that gives us a lot of flexibility around how we want to route for each project. So if a particular business is more cost sensitive, we can help them to try to prioritize the cheaper CDNs and on cost. For businesses that are really particular about their quality of experience, we can decide to always try to route more on a performance basis. So it gives us a lot of flexibility for all the different projects that we work on.
Great, thanks. For David and Alicia, have you seen customer needs and priorities that have evolved over the last year? Alicia, I'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the main contributors for us are definitely flexibility and control. Everything is about the user experience. So in order to be able to control the user experience, you need to be able to have, in order to be able to give them great user experience, you need to have the control over that entire end-to-end workflow. And then also having the flexibility that some of them just mentioned about being able to switch between CDNs if you do have a multi-CDN deployment. And then just real-time insights and analytics around what's happening with all of your CDNs, and sort of everything in your workflow is going to be able to give you sort of those actionable results to be able to make changes on the fly and serve your customers and be able to debug.
David, what have you heard from your customers?
I think there's been a big drive into, once again, kind of maintain and excelling the general performance, quality experience for the end users. Cost is always going to be that factor as well, and having that competition is really driving and making that cost a good point that can have impact. Our customers are really key on having the control and the options. They always want to have the options whether or not they use them, and that's something that we've seen as kind of like the step one is people want to have a multi-CDN strategy, although they might not even leverage it very much, and that goes into also just the real key thing for a lot of customers to see is a big drive and continue push for redundancy to maintain stability. Even if it might not be paramount for the best, most potentially expensive delivery and performance, maintaining the always up and the always option to maintain that quality, or at least that ability to deliver, is the paramount reason that we see a lot of drive in the continued direction that we've gone.
Thanks. So Thomas and Zach get to focus on these large expected events like the Super Bowl and World Cup. So unexpected traffic spikes, you don't know where they are and where they're going to be watching the video from. Thomas, you recently delivered the World Cup. Can you share a little bit about the setup differences that you had in place for that event versus what you have throughout the year?
Yeah, preparing for the World Cup represented unknown load. We had never done this before, so we weren't quite sure what to expect. And so our Multi CDN strategy was actually really accelerated by the fact that we had to broadcast this content. And so a lot of what I explained earlier was set up specifically for this and has kind of been a part of our strategy going forward. It was still early on when the World Cup started, so a lot of that was like looking at our data, experimenting with different kinds of configs. Zach brings up a good point, kind of that business logic, like the cost versus performance, and making sure that the trade-offs there were set correctly and the right percentage of distribution were given to the right CDNs based on the data that we've seen. So a lot of that was just tuning and tweaking our implementation and making sure we understood it a little bit better, and understanding some of the edge cases of CDNs maybe we hadn't worked with before.
And I believe you spoke about this at another event, but you guys did some video in 4K for the World Cup. Can you share a little bit about that experience or any lessons learned?
Yeah, so 4K from a delivery standpoint, we didn't do a lot. I think mostly the heavy lift was just understanding the encoding side and the playout side. The delivery side of things, we actually stick with one CDN. We stuck with Fastly for all of the UHD content. The objects were, of course, a bit larger, but we didn't really see too much of a delta between performance we see for our normal HD streams and our UHD streams, and Fastly handled the load very well.
Great, thanks. Were there any lessons learned from this experience that you can share?
Yeah, so I guess when you come up with a strategy, if you have a strategy, I think one of the important things to do is to make sure that you have kind of knobs and real-time kind of flags that you can flip as you see things happen in real time, and be able to react very quickly. And redundancies are important, but redundancies that aren't either automated or very easy to use are not super useful when you're thinking about like live TV, and everything is really important to be able to be switched and optimized in real time. So I would say just make sure you have as much control as you can. Be able to turn off CDNs easily, enumerate all of your single points of failure, be able to route around different services that may or may not be up during the live event.
Great, thank you. Now, Zach, the Super Bowl we were just talking about is 70-something days away. How have you prepared for this event so far?
Yeah, it's always CBS gets the Super Bowl every 3 years, but this is the first time we're doing it with the Multi CDN setup. We're getting to a level now where as more and more users are switching their viewership of big events like Super Bowl and other big events that we do more and more to digital online streaming offerings, viewership is just increasing exponentially every time we have it, to really getting to a scale now where it's an event and a traffic volume that there is no one single CDN that can effectively handle some of the traffic volumes that we're sort of getting to. So I think a lot of sort of what Tom said really applies for us as well, where we've been active on planning and preparation for Super Bowl, for almost a year already now. It's really important that we have a lot of redundancy options, that that we also have the operational visibility in there to really know what's actually going on with all the components of the workflow, with everything from signal acquisition, encoding, distribution on the CDNs, the cloud origins that we're using, up to 5 CDNs, as I mentioned. There's a lot of moving pieces when you're running a workflow like that. So there's a lot of work that we're doing to try and collect as much metrics and log data from all the different systems that we can, trying to build centralized dashboards so that we have close to real-time visibility on what's going on, and then understand and have well-documented runbooks of all the possible failover options, which sometimes is things that maybe you don't expect as much. We've had March Madness events where we've had problems with DNS providers. There's lots of pieces in the workflow, and we really have to consider all of them.
Great, thanks. David, given your experience with NBC, with BAM, companies just like these guys here, what solutions do you suggest that your customers look at to handle unexpected traffic spikes?
Well, part of that's the challenge is if it's unexpected, how much can you do? The idea that be prepared. I've worked on 3 Olympics, 2 Super Bowls, and we get thrown all sorts of interesting things that can happen in an event of that scale. To me, in my experience, what makes it so you can successfully get through it is 2 parts. You want to have your automated and your manual redundancy kind of routes that you can have tested, and that's really key. Highly tested as much as you can beforehand, and then from there you need to have some kind of key data source, information that you can react to. Right? Do we know we have a problem? Is it just isolated? And where as much data as you can as those unexpected things come up, so then you can then have some kind of reaction. And that's kind of the key thing is you need to put in place the ability to react to these type of things that could go wrong, and hopefully they don't. But we've worked on events that we have over 10 levels of different redundancy that we can act upon and institute very quickly. And that's the key part is you need to have your options. You need to be able to execute those options, know what that impact is going to be, and be prepared for those before it happens. Pre-warming caches, making sure that you don't stampede herd over and make it worse. Have these plans in place and be ready for them. Have the data to be able to react to it, and then make those decisions very carefully to know and implement those very fast. And the key thing for that is testing ahead of time as much as you can, which is great. It's great to say test it and figure it out beforehand. Some of this stuff becomes very difficult to actually simulate or test, but there are routes and there's good experience out there that can help drive that. So it's be as prepared as you can for the unexpected and be ready to act upon it.
Great, thanks. Now for Wendy, who gets to prepare for the unexpected, the tornadoes and the hurricanes and the earthquakes. How do you handle such unpredictable traffic spikes? Are you doing things like David said? What is the Weather Channel doing about this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, while we don't have months to prepare, we do generally have days. We have really awesome meteorologists that prepare us for storms and events that are coming our way. Guerrilla testing and making sure you have the appropriate infrastructure and metrics in place to be able to context switch when needed. Having a winter storm, going up the central is very different from having a hurricane that's going up the East Coast. If we have, we recently had Hurricane Michael that had a very big impact on Mexico Beach, and knowing that a large majority of our traffic is going to be in the East Coast region, we were able to route and do some different traffic levels to be able to support that. So while some of it is unpredictable, we are able to predict a little bit of it. And we make our apps perform as best as they could based on the data that we have.
Great. Alicia, you kind of touched on this before, but Fastly can oftentimes be in place and doesn't know when they're going to get traffic from these companies, when they're going to switch over. What is Fastly doing to prepare for that, again, unexpected traffic?
So I think it's core for us around how we just architect our network. We try to focus on building a very modern network, and that kind of goes into how we build out our POPs. We try to build out our POPs to be able to automatically scale those. So we're putting, certain ports in place so that when we do have to go through an upgrade cycle, that's a very quick cycle and it's a rapidly scaled cycle. But I think in conjunction to that, we have about 27 terabits per second of bandwidth globally. Right now, we're trending somewhere under 5 terabits per second, and we have consistently seen spikes. Like our latest was like 5.2 terabits per second of sustained traffic for about 4 minutes, and it was totally unpredictable. And we're expecting to see, higher spikes than that for the Super Bowl. Like we're expecting like 10 terabits per second. And so we encounter these spiky type events in many scenarios. Some of them may be DDoS attacks, but some of them may actually look like a DDoS attack, but they're actually legitimate traffic. So when Prince died, for example, that truly looked like a DDoS attack on a number of different sites, but it was legitimate traffic that we had to handle and be able to deliver, without fail. So that's kind of how we handle it. And then another thing is just making sure that we're very strategic about our publications is just really key. This helps us to yield better last mile results for end users. And then it also increases the initial quality of the user experience. So that modern network design and then that request collapsing and then being able to have that built out capacity to be able to handle any and every type of, our focus is around handling every use case, whether it be your steady state traffic or having spikes. And we have customers that have a lot of spikes.
Got it. Thank you. No, that's great. So if we all come back to this panel 5 years from now, what do you think your delivery architecture will look like, ideally? If budgets weren't the thing, what would you have in place, Zach?
I think that as more, as I said, with more and more people switching to streaming, and we're seeing every time we have the Super Bowl just that exponential growth, I think we're starting to get to traffic levels where I'm starting to have a lot of questions around, does the internet as it's structured today, is it really designed to handle, some of the levels of traffic that, we might be pushing in 5 years' time? So, I think there's a lot of things I'm interested in, looking at where it makes sense for high events, getting, access to cache deeper in eyeball networks, in the end user ISP network. So, there's obviously more and more ISPs that are owning CDNs now as well now. So there's Comcast, CenturyLink acquired Level 3. There's Verizon have Edgecast. So there's, I see a lot more kind of deeper deployments over time of caching equipment into these ISP networks. And then, I also see potential in technologies like peer-to-peer to help with some of that offloading, with staying within ISP networks and being able to better utilize some of those links and help to offload from CDNs there. I think it'll still be some time on some of the user perception and business side before we're necessarily ready to get there. But I think there's going to have to be new approaches to how we use the internet to really enable, if we want to ever get to the 100 million concurrents that broadcast would have on an event like Super Bowl.
Great. Thomas, same for you 5 years from now. What does it look like?
I kind of want to say everything Zach said.
Ditto. Done.
I don't know. TCP HTTP is not the best protocol really to be sending video across. So hopefully we either find ways of creatively handling that or new ways to deliver video. Peer-to-peer, something we've been experimenting with to some really interesting effect. Really interesting to see how that develops and how what the adoption is like in the U.S. for those kinds of technologies. And just getting closer to the end user, talking about ISPs and making sure that you have your content as close to the users as possible, and then just a more decentralized way of distributing content.
Great. Wendy, 5 years from now?
Yeah, 5 years from now, I'm not going to repeat what the gentleman have stated. The only thing I will add to it is just, obviously getting closer to the end user, pushing more to the edge as possible. 5 years from now, the way people consume video, the devices they're going to consume it on is going to be very different. So we got to make sure that we're ready for the scale and ready to be able to take that on.
Great. For Alicia and David, kind of same question, but what will your companies focus on 5 years from now?
I definitely think for us, it's around, Tom mentioned about Mediashell. It's really a product that we released about 1.5 years ago. And it's a request collapsing service that can be used across multi CDNs. I think one of the issues with deploying multi CDN type strategies is it becomes very complex to troubleshoot and isolate and be able to see kind of what's going on. Well, Fastly's product allows you to be able to have the same core features and functionality of our edge platform amongst all of those CDNs. So we're doing request collapsing across all CDNs. We're providing you with the real-time logs and visibility across what's happening with your CDNs as they deliver, so that when you do go back to your CDNs, you have actionable data that you can actually show them, say, hey, you're having congestion here in this area. I'm seeing this, from you, and it's not a back and forth, well, that's not our problem, that's not our fault. We really want to be able to kind of help alleviate the ease of being able to work with CDNs and being able to provide the flexibility that you need to be able to seamlessly switch CDNs. Like, it should be a very automated process based on the analytics and the data that you're getting. And then I think also just making sure that we stay ahead. We try to be very transparent with our customers. It's something that's very key to us, and really listening to our customers, understanding what's important to them and what's important to their future and what they're working on, and making sure that we can absorb that into our roadmap, and just working from a collaborative perspective with our customers.
Great. David?
It's hard to add on to everything that's been said, but
Fair.
For us, the reality is 5 years from now, and that's almost 2 lifetimes in this industry, right? So I can be really optimistic when I'm looking that far out, okay? And I think the reality is, the internet's going to be a different place. We're going to be delivering things in a different manner, and we're going to be working towards how do we make that truly a reality, and what is going to be the implications for the customers. I think on top of already what was kind of said, I think there's going to be potentials and a lot of potential changes in how security is applied and how that really reflects down through the CN when it comes to access and so forth, let alone in the DRM space and whatnot. But we're going to have a different internet, most likely, in that time period, right? How things will be delivered will be different. How they're going to have to be consumed on the clients will be interesting and different. And I also hope that, in being really optimistic towards the future here, that we have much better, much cleaner interop between the CDNs. That it really becomes seamless between whether I want to use Fastly, whether I want to use Akamai and Limelight, and how they can work together yet still provide more enhancements in the future to security and access across them and so forth, so that we can have a better all-around delivery experience. Now, I, once again, think I'm maybe a little over-optimistic, but in a 5-year goal, I think that's where we're going to see so much changes, and everything from the player development up is going to be a new experience that's going to have to go with that.
Great. David, I'm going to pick on you again. You also gave a really great presentation at Demuxt a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. Can you provide kind of an overview of what's going on in the load balancing part of this industry, what people are looking at and where things are shaping up?
From like a multi CDN perspective.
Correct,
and so forth.
yeah.
So right now, and this is I think one of the interesting things that we're going to see evolve over the next couple of years as well, is there's different approaches for doing the multi CDN type of system. You have, as was mentioned, there's things like Sodexis, that's where we're going to be doing kind of at the DNS level. We also heard Deliver. That one offers kind of their own interesting mechanism for polling and replacement, and with some also level of DNS rerouting. Companies like Streamroot also have solutions that can do, their Compass product can apply stuff even at the client level and do solutions there. We've done solutions that have been customized also in that point. Fastly offers things like their Media Shield, right? Yes. Hey, there we go. And really cool concepts that they can apply on, like the connection collapsing and request collapsing as well to help streamline this stuff. Right now, there's a number of different options, and right now it can be valuable in different approaches for different customers as their needs go. I think there's still room for additional innovation and see what can come out here, because every one of these solutions, you're trading off either a level of control or trust for functionality. And it's just different variations that really meet different needs, so it kind of become interesting. And as the CDNs hopefully also continue to have better interoperability, work better, and better data that can drive this, more solutions can be applied into how this can really come to the market and what you can choose to implement. I don't think there's just going to be this one, like this is the standard for multi-CDN, because there really are different uses and needs. And even from what we've talked about up here and heard, there's different routes that you take for that, whether it's just for failover, whether it's for distributed traffic, whether it's for cost benefit, right? These are all different drivers that have different needs.
Great, thank you. So lastly for you guys, last question until we can actually get some questions from the audience as well, if you guys are okay with that, of course. I know you guys mentioned peer-to-peer down here, and it's great to hear Multi CDN, and it warms my heart because I'm from a peer-to-peer company myself. Are there any new technologies that you guys haven't mentioned, but 4K, blockchain, anything that you guys are seeing that's really going to change the industry for all of us sitting here in front of you? What is it that we should be keeping an eye on? What should we be excited about? Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I think things are always changing in the video space. Obviously, next generation codecs are a big subject at this point. Where I think it's probably, at least for us, still a bit early to kind of be considering AV1 in production. But I think that's certainly over time. Something that we'd hope to get to, and I think some of that technology is really what's going to enable these higher bitrate streams that you're going to need for 4K. I was recently in Japan and saw some NHK's 8K demos that they're planning to broadcast a lot of the 2020 Olympics in. Like, it's data rates and resolutions and frame rates are just continuing to go up, and if by the next Super Bowl we're trying to stream in 4K, how do we really sort of support it? And I think that the next gen codecs are going to be required really to be able to offer some of those sort of streams.
Great. I'm actually going to mix it up. Alicia, we're going to jump around now.
Yeah, sure. So from a CDN perspective, I think a number of things, like pushing more and more logic out to the edge is definitely a key focus for us. You've got this plethora of data that's available to you at the edge, and being able to make decisions at the edge instead of having to go back to the origin is definitely where we see things going. I think another thing for us is more of a, I don't know if you remember back in the data center days when people were using a hybrid technology of data center and bare metal servers or cloud servers. I think the same thing is kind of going to happen with CDN, where our customers are going to start deploying more of a hybrid type scenario where they use the public CDN for certain things, but then also having custom built caches built for them where they can actually determine how much storage is there. They can determine how long things are held in cache and what's held in cache or whatever, so that they can guarantee the performance, and they can also guarantee sort of what the load is going to be on origin. So I think that's going to be a key differentiator over the next few years.
Very cool. Wendy, I'm going to jump to you.
Yeah, I mean, just as stated before, increased resolution, increased frame rates. From a consumer product perspective, really want to see VR at scale. I know from the weather company perspective, that will be a very big pillar for us. And just continue to optimize, just continue to make sure that we're able to scale and be ready for the future.
Absolutely. David?
I mean, I'm all for, content resolution scaling and so forth. I still wonder at what point are we going to kind of max out, 4K, 8K. Yeah. There's going to be a human perceptibility issue. It's great to have that cool new technology and so forth, but there's still, I just hope that at some point it does level out to a level, and I think the new codecs and so forth are going to be critical regardless. So I don't know if the content, dimensions and quality is going to be a continual scale forever, and I hope not. But I think how we can work with that type of stuff. I think augmented experiences with further data and interactivity. It's something that always kind of comes cyclical, and I think that would be interesting to see how that plays in, even in going back to the VR or the augmented reality side. But even without that, what else are we going to be doing with our video experiences that make them interactive to engage and keep our users there, or the kind of connected multi-screen experience, how that comes back in circle. I think we'll still be interested in the future and into what we could see. And in the delivery side, I think it's going to be interesting to see how things end up working out from the ISP to the CN level and what type of interoperability happens there, let alone things like net neutrality and what that has an impact on our industry as a whole.
I also think that from the resolution perspective, we're coming out with these higher resolutions, but I'm interested to see, how that's going to affect the consumer, because, the higher resolutions that come out, the more your devices have to be,
right.
Ready to be able to do.
Across the board. It's not just affects you or me and what my individual bandwidth is.
Right.
But there's also the consumer level with that stuff, and that's I think that eventually we're going to have a split on that a little bit. That there's going to be the consumer level, and then there's also going to be the business level, and that there can be reasons to have that for commercial type of systems. But at what point is it commercial?
But not to every day.
Residential.
Yeah.
Users,
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool, yeah, and I mean, we have our eyes on CMAF, common encryption. Roger Pantos talked about that this morning. It's interesting. HDR, I think, is something that is really interesting, even for non-4K content. Bringing that to more content would be something to look at. Also, like chunk transfer encoding, low latency options, another thing that we're actively looking at.
Very cool. Great. Well, you guys, that's all the questions I have for them. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to pick the brains of those with 20 years of experience here? Yeah, go ahead.
Easy question. Are we going to get to watch the Super Bowl in 4K?
He asked if he gets to watch the Super Bowl in 4K this year.
It's not looking like it at this stage. Maybe we'll see what happens over the next few years. I mean, the thing with an event like the Super Bowl is when you're trying to get to millions of viewers, you really just you have to cap the bit rates. Some of the bit rate caps we're looking at are probably around the sort of 5 to 6 megabit. At the top end, because at volume that there isn't the internet capacity out there to really handle it.
Great. Shenker?
Yes. Thank you for the great panel, by the way. Yes, Zak Shanker from B202. I'm just wondering, we are living here a lot of problems on the CDN side, I guess. Like people are complaining in terms of we don't know what the problem is, where the problem is, how to locate it. That's now so. Industry is trying to find like multi CDN solutions, or you mentioned like maybe some private CDNs integrated with hybrids. Do you see a trend to somehow put some standards in terms of how to manage all the CDNs, how to get feedback from the field, like so that all the OTT players and CDNs are on the same KPI and understand each other perfectly well?
Can you guys hear it now?
Yeah.
I see the need for it. I haven't seen that actually starting to happen yet, and that's what I hope for in the future. I mean, the reality is the true multi-CDN environment, it's been going on for a while. We've done this for quite some time, but it's getting more attention and more focus now, especially because seamless switching between CDNs and so forth is more of a fact now, and in use. That I think that attention, that drive, and that's push in the market is going to hopefully help with that. And there's companies like Fastly who have really, really good insights into what's happening in their system, and you can get that information very quickly, whereas others, that can be more of a challenge. I hope as this new standard of true multi-CDN really takes hold, that becomes part of the industry standard, but we haven't really seen a big drive or anyone kind of leading that off yet, in my side.
Yeah, I definitely think that with Mediashell and being able, so Fastly is one of Fastly's core capabilities is being able to offer real-time logs, and we're talking about like a 1 to 2 second delay of delivering those logs or streaming those logs in real time to the endpoint of your choice. So whether you're using like Sumo Logic or you're using like Amazon service or login trees or whatever, like we're totally agnostic with where we stream that to. And I think from a Mediashell perspective, you get to see that same visibility across all your CDNs. So being able to aggregate all that data in sort of one centralized cache and being able to kind of like work together. Like we've had a lot of success working together with other CDNs, and a lot of that drive is being pushed by our customers, right? And Fastly can't go and say, we want a CDN to do X, Y, Z. It really has to be pushed by these folks that are on the panel. But we really have gotten a lot of success and collaboration in working with those CDNs. Because at the end of the day, we want the customer to be successful. We want the customer to have the flexibility to be able to see end-to-end what's happening in their workflow and to be able to react very quickly to serve customized experiences, to be able to recognize when they're having issues and faults, and also to be able to kind of handle the stress on their origin. Like the more and more that you can create that collapsing within the shield, the more and more the origin is protected, and you're going to see higher cache hit ratios. Like we're seeing cache hit ratios on the magnitude of like 99+% with that solution. So there's a varied number of things out there, but I definitely think that that's going to be one of the key metrics, the logging and
yeah, I mean,
analytics.
I think that it's great that all these CDNs are starting to provide more real-time access logs, and Fastly I think is certainly one of the best offerings out there on the real-time logging in terms of the time to get log delivery, in terms of the flexibility that you have to really any values you can get to in VCL, you can go and throw in your log and customize your log format. So I think there's a lot more flexibility there than with a lot of the other vendors we work with. But I think there's still no good straight off-the-shelf solution for what do you do with this data. As we're going into Super Bowl, we are trying to pull the logs from all our edge CDNs, from Mediashell, from Origins, from our Keowee systems, from Codexes, from lots of different pieces, and some of the estimates that we're getting up to is raw log data now might be 20, 30, 40 terabytes across the day of just raw log lines. How do you actually turn that into actionable metrics so you can look at in aggregate? How do you make sure that you're able to slice it by different dimensions that make sense? Do you want to look at particular ASNs, particular POPs? With Mediashell, understanding, is there a problem with Mediashell? Is there a problem with the underlying origin? We're creating workflows that are a lot more complicated now. So, you really get into big data problems to actually effectively know what's going on in your workflows.
Just having access to the fire hydrant doesn't give you the data you need to
Right.
actually action on it within the next 20 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I
Preferably
think
2
looking
minutes.
at that log data, like it's not necessary for you to take all of the aspects of the log data. You have to figure out the aspects that are important to your business, and you can actually stream just a subset of that because these logging platforms are really expensive. And if you don't know what you're looking for, what your metrics of success are, you will get inundated with extraordinarily high costs.
But at the same time, I think in certain scenarios, there's actually sometimes signal in actually having all of the data set. So, if suddenly your request rates drop in a certain region, that you get that information. Sometimes the problems that we see with CDNs aren't just straight HTTP error codes. If there was always an HTTP error code whenever there was a CDN problem, my life would be so much easier. But at the end of the day, sometimes you see spikes in response time. Sometimes you see problems with mid-tier caches. Sometimes you see problems with origin fetches. Like, the internet is just so variable. There's so many different problems that you can get into that, while I think downsampling is, good where you can manage it, I think you also have to make sure that you don't miss some of the important signals in doing that downsampling.
Great. Brian?
I've heard a lot talked about using player data, right? Being I guess with SDKs before and things like that. I guess maybe Zach and other folks, but are you using that data as well, or is it's less maybe useful in CDN switching, but for other reasons? Or talk a little bit about using client player data and optimizing.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely relying on client-side Keowee data as well. We've across different businesses, there's different solutions being used there. Conviva, Mux, other solutions, and I think it's critical to have that client-side Keowee data because it could expose is it a CDN problem? Do you have an ABR switching problem? One of the things we were able to find with looking at Keowee data was we had some cases where on some of our sites, as you scroll down the page, the video player gets a lot smaller and follows you down the page. So we were able to see that there was significant downscaling happening, and we were able to save huge amounts on our CDN bill. So I think it's pretty critical to have that data, but then at the same time, it doesn't necessarily tell you the full picture when you have a delivery problem, when you have, say, a media problem, and you've got like PTS misalignment between segments or between a primary and backup stream. I think it's a great starting point, but then to really dig into root cause analysis and understand where the problem is and what you need to do to fix it, I think you need data from all parts of your stack.
Yeah, I can definitely echo that. We do like request level logging on clients, and so we're able to, what's the picture from the client, what's the picture from the Edge CDN, what's the picture from Fastly, what's the picture from Origin. That's super, super helpful as we triage things. It's not a part of our like active switching algorithm right now. It might be interesting to see how that evolves and how we get signals that are useful out of the clients to help inform figuring out which CDN is best for that user. But absolutely important when diving in, doing some sort of exploration on an issue that you saw in production.
In Multi CDN, as I mentioned, there's a lot of different options. Some, a lot of them do use the client-side metrics as a factor in decisioning. Some of them don't. And that really comes down to, once again, what is going to be the right solution for you and where are you potentially seeing these problems? Ultimately, you can take as much, you want the big picture, right? And that doesn't mean you can get it from any one person or source in this regard. That doesn't mean you can't do that and have success in that route. We've implemented multi-CDN for customers that it just is based off of what the client experience is, because, well, we just want to solve that for them, and we can at least do what we know. But once again, we don't know, is this a problem in the source, or something else? If we switch them, they're going to have this same problem potentially elsewhere. So there's different factors there, but it definitely can and should be part of that decisioning.
Yeah, and I definitely think platforms like Deliver and Conviva and Nice People at Work work well with multi CDN and trying to figure out. But I think it depends on sort of the maturity of your organization. Some companies don't really have the ability to kind of really employ those different platforms, so they may be delivering traffic just based specifically on weights, or just based on they can use those for delivering based on performance, but it just really depends on what the customer's use case is and what their platform looks like.
Great. Yep.
Thomas, you and Zach talked about multi-CDN configurations and having up to 5 CDN, but you also talked about testing P2P. Why test P2P if you have 5 CDNs, and do you see that? I'm just curious to that question.
Yeah, our exploration is kind of twofold. One is cost was not super important to us, but we were just curious for our live content. Everybody's watching the same thing. Different people are at kind of different points in what's considered live, and so it's really compelling for that use case. So we were curious about offload from Origin, and of course that represents a lot of cost savings. That wasn't our primary objective. Our primary objective was actually quality and being able to impact the user's session, especially if they're in a location that's not well served by a CDN. So those are the two important things we were looking for. Definitely primarily focused on quality and making sure that those sessions that had this enabled were actually performing better. So those were our metrics. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I think, as well, with very large-scale events, when you're getting to internet-breaking sort of levels of traffic, it provides another path of distribution. Provides a way to use, more links within, a particular ISP network, to share content, within a household or within a neighborhood more effectively, without having to go back to the CDN edges.
And the flip side of that too also is on the enterprise side. So we've had to work with a lot of customers when doing enterprise CDN-based type solutions. So it's internal to a network, but you have cross-WAN traffic that can be too heavy when you're doing CEO addresses worldwide. And peer-to-peer solutions, when managed appropriately, can be very, very powerful in that type of situation as well.
Zach, I wanted to check, is that the main reason CBS is exploring P2P as well?
I think it's everything sort of Tom said as well. I think cost is certainly a factor there. You can certainly once you're using peer-to-peer, you can significantly reduce the cost. I think there's certainly interest from my side in the also looking at areas where it could help improve quality of experience. If you're able to get a segment quicker from a local peer, then you may be able to improve overall quality of experience. But I think that is something that, as we get into it, we definitely want to make sure that we can always still ensure that level of quality, and we aren't sacrificing that just for trying to save cost.
Yeah, and I definitely think cost has been important over the years, but I definitely see quality shifting above cost, where you have to be cognizant of the cost, but the quality, because there's such a plethora right now of OTT providers, it's like users are having so much fatigue around having to subscribe to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different platforms. And the attention span of the common user is like worse than a goldfish. So you're trying to focus on ways to keep them engaged, and you really have to be able to focus on those aspects to give them the best experience. So if you're totally focused on cost, you've heard the old adage that you get what you pay for. And so, you have to look at both of those. You have to look at the cost and the quality of experience.
Yeah, I think it is always that balance. So, at CBS High, we see these 25 plus different business use cases. And, I think really for each business unit, there's, for their GMs and their technical teams, there's always that trade-off of, with premium content, with our subscription products like All Access, I think there's, certainly always, high demand for quality, the best experience. When you get to, advertising supported brands and editorial brands, it's always that kind of more balancing act of, sure, we always want to provide the best quality, but we have to make sure that we still fit within their budgets and can offer the best solution for each use case.
Great. Any more questions? Yep.
So you guys mentioned that it was becoming much easier to load balancing thanks to all the tools and so on. And it seems that now that low latency is coming on the market and becoming a hot topic, every company is coming back to like the old days where their own proprietary solution or own protocol or technology. So how do you see that load balancing mechanism working in a low latency environment? Any of you?
That was a loaded question.
I think it really depends on as things settle down onto these different protocols and processes, because some of them have very, very different implications at the CDN level, downward or upward, depending on how you want to look at it. So there's not a solid solution, I'd say, right now. When you look at things on, let's say, the non-UDP WebRTC side, and you're looking at like low latency HLS, that I think that one's going to probably solidify into more kind of standard routes very soon, and that's stuff that can work well within the CDNs as they work now, and that follows this model. Does that achieve your sub-second latency? No, that's a different thing, and that's going to be a solution that is probably going to still have some battles going on for a while as it really lays out. Because hey, use our system and our platform, and don't worry, we got worldwide coverage for you. That's the game that we're seeing right now. But I don't see that probably applying nearly as much for quite some time to our customers and Kubo and CBS and probably the Weather Channel as well. But things like low latency HLS with CMAF, chunk-based delivery, these are things that can be a reality that follow a model that has better support and standardization across the board, and I don't think will be a challenge to maintain with what people are doing.
I mean, I think there's still definitely concerns that I have around, ensuring that quality of experience with low latency streaming offerings. The closer you're trying to get to the live edge, the more risk. The more risk there is. Yeah, it's less buffer. If I'm trying to get 1 second end-to-end latency, I mean my player buffers can only be at most a second. It's and then there's the whole rest of the production chain and delivery chain and all of that that level I think is something that we're nowhere close today to really being able to deliver that, particularly at scale. I think for us it's for a long time still it's going to be about reducing that end-to-end latency, but I think on large events it's still going to be a lot more about ensuring that quality. Right. And I think there's certainly a lot of applications where you have more interactivity and things like that we do need to reduce latency, but how many I don't think we today have a lot of applications where we would risk the overall player experience.
Well, I guess to bounce this back to you though, if you had to choose today, and I'm not saying you would and want to, but if you had to choose with a low latency solution today, would you want to go with like a low latency HLS chunk, HTTP based solution, or or do you think there's potentially less risk in going with like the WebRTC, UDP type solution?
I think with where we are today, it's definitely, I think that you're reducing lock-in, you've got more delivery options, you can still utilize a lot of your existing multi CDN setups if you do go down the, CMAF, HTTP-based streaming. I think there's certainly potential in WebRTC, but today there's only a small number of CDNs out there that actually support it. There's not a lot of standards around some of the WebRTC delivery, so at least now, I see HTTP as probably being a better way to go there. There's certainly things that we're looking at, with sort of evolutions of HTTP that, I think could help to improve delivery, with new TCP congestion control with BBR, in the future with what I guess now is HTTP 3, which is HTTP over quick, so using a UDP-based protocol to have sort of more customized congestion control there. I think there's options there that you can use some of these already and some of these very soon. That'll help to improve
down to the 2 to 5 year mark.
Yeah.
But I guess also it's important that you experiment. I think we're talking about these things very theoretically.
Absolutely.
If your Fubo is small enough that we can run these experiments and throw them out to production to a small cohort, see how they work, iterate. I think that's really, really important for this, because there's the way we think it works and there's the way it actually works, and it's really, really important to see something either working or not working.
And that's also how it helps push the industry to make it work.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think too, the end-to-end latency really has a lot to do with the type of use case that you're delivering. I definitely think that in sports, end-to-end latency is critical, because when you get to things like spoiler alerts, that can be really critical to your user base. And then again, what Tom said about being able to be iterative. So you need to have a platform that allows you to be able to do sort of A/B testing, where you can push out a certain amount of, push out code to a certain amount of your users and see how that is being received, and then being able to pull that back sort of in real time so that you can continue to test and see what works with your user base. So you just need to have that flexibility to do both of those.
Great. Awesome. Thanks you guys all for coming to attend. Panelists, thank you for all your valuable input and shared thoughts. I hope you have a great rest of Stream Media West.
Thank you, Alex.